So welcome everybody to another interview in the series for the PBP prep seminars. If you've seen the other videos, we've interviewed people that have gone to PBP in the past and have brought back some expertise to share with other people. And today I wanted to bring in a slightly different group than the others that I had interviewed so far. The big difference here is that while those first three, Cheryl, Roger, and Karen all approached PBP from an individual perspective. The group I'm bringing to you today all plan to do this as a group, and in fact did finish PBP as a group, rode the whole thing together. And I wanted to delve into that aspect as well. So quickly here, we've got Carlin Eng, we've got Ben Goldenberg, we have Ian Kizu-Blair, and we have Irving Pham. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Rob.
Good
to see everybody.
So just to kick things off, I want to ask you questions about the sorts of, pardon me, things that brought you to randonneuring, and then later, once there, brought you to even considering PBP and then doing PBP. So among you four, if I remember correctly, Ian is the only one that had gone to PBP before. The rest of you, Carlin, Ben, and Irving, were all first timers in 2019. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So let's start with Ian. How did you become aware of randonneuring? What brought you to that, and what made you think it was something that you'd like to do?
My dad was always really into bikes, so he was into Rivendell, and he got a vintage bicycle quarterly, the predecessor to the current bicycle quarterly. So we always had them lying around the house. And Christmas 2009, I was sitting around the house reading Bike Quarterly, and it had an article about PBP, and I was like, oh, I wonder how far 1,200 kilometers is. So I looked it up on, I did the conversion. I was like, 750 miles. That's ridiculous. And I was already, I had done 1 century up to that point. I had done the Tucson century. But yeah, I got interested in randonneuring after reading that, and I was attracted by the bikes and the style, the vintage French stuff, because I'm kind of like a Francophile. So I signed up for the Lighthouse 200K in 2010. So and then that was my intro to randonneuring.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, you and your dad would ride these brevets, right?
Yeah. My dad. At first I did the first one on my own I did the first one with my friend Milos, the 2010 Lighthouse, and then I roped my dad into some of them. So we did Santa Rosa, the Napa, the fast one in Napa, and we did some other 200Ks together. We did a popular and a tandem. He's a little out of the age range now for randonneuring with me, but yeah, we did a lot of long rides together, and that was something that we've always done for my whole life. As a kid, we would go on rides on the Moraga Trail when I was 7 or 8 years old.
So you started riding brevets with your dad, and then continued to ride brevets. But at what point did you become aware of PBP being something that you thought you could do?
Probably after my so in 2011, I did in 2010, I did a 200, 300, 400K. Mm-hmm. And the 400K, I really suffered on it. So I thought, okay, I can't do a 600K. That's too hard. Then the next year, I came back with improved lighting, improved bike. My lights were really bad, like worse than you can imagine in the first year. Mm-hmm. I had a flashlight just from Lowe's clamped on the rack, so the beam pattern was extremely kind of narrow tunnel vision, so you couldn't see anything if you were turning. So it was kind of scary riding the 400K. But I was with John POTUS, Gabe Ellert, Brian Clarkson, some other, and this guy Ricardo. So I wasn't as bad with my lights, but it was a little scary. So 2011, I came back and I did my first 600K. People were pressuring me to go to PBP in 2011, but I didn't feel like I was ready. So I decided not to go then. But then from 2011 to 2015, it was really like a burning passion, obsession to go to PBP. So I invested kind of a lot of yeah.
So am I guessing correctly that you caught that passion and you roped these other three guys into doing it in 2019? When did you first meet the rest of the crew here? And
yeah, when did we meet afresh? In
Yeah, I guess, can I like step in here, I guess?
Yeah.
I think around 2011, 2012, I believe I saw Ian at the Bridge Plaza or somewhere in Christie Field. And I saw like, oh, here's another like youthful looking guy wearing jorts and on a cool bike. Like it was me and Brian Wee, and we were like, we should be friends with him. But it wasn't until like a Pacifica 7-Eleven at like 3 a.m. where we were all just zonked out of our minds on the flesh. Must have been like hour 20 or 22 or something, and we're all just sitting there in a 7-Eleven, and yeah, we were all very sleep deprived at that point, but started talking, and yeah, just I feel like we made plans to like ride at some point and like started hanging out, and yeah, we eventually started riding brevets together, started doing the flush together, and yeah, that's kind of how we got to know each other.
so I forgot to add this to the intro here. And now's a good time to bring this back. Was this the genesis of Boyz on the Hoods? So explain what Boyz on the Hoods is, and then see if you can answer that question.
Yeah, no, yeah, our other boy on the hood, or our main boy on the hood, Brian Wee, is not here, but that goes to your other question, like what got me started into rando, and it was Brian Wee, and he moved to the Bay Area a little bit before me and was always interested in populaires and starting to do rando, and he convinced me to join him. Our first ride was a Davis Night 200K, and it was absolutely bonkers, but we both survived, had a great time. Yeah, and I think we were scheming up flesh names one year, and we were riding up to Mount Diablo on a training ride, and it was really hot. It was a long climb, as you all know, and we were just spitballing ideas for names, and we just thought Boyz on the Hoods would be kind of a fun play on the
movie title, right?
The movie title, but also, you know, we're not in the drops. We're not trying to crush it. We're not trying to race for anything. We're trying to ride for a really long time and have a good time. So we thought it was a little funny play on the film title, but we thought it was also a great flesh team name. So.
Yeah. So Carlin, give us a little bit of background as to how you got into this. I mean, did you know Irving at that time?
Yeah, so I had a similar story to Irving where, so I come mostly from a road cycling background. So I was, riding road bikes with coworkers and doing like quote, like fast roadie rides. But came to know Brian through a mutual friend, Brian and Irving through mutual friends. Brian was super excited about Randonneurs and would talk about it all the time. And it seemed like a really cool way to just experience the Bay Area and see things that I would never experience in a car, or things that I would never experience kind of as a quote normal person. So yeah, I got really into it. I remember actually, funnily enough, meeting Ian the first time on a roadie ride with a group called the Mission Cycling Club. And they used to do a ride in San Francisco every morning, every Tuesday morning up Hawk Hill. So it was just like, fast guys in Lycra. And Ian is the guy wearing like a Showers Pass jacket, and he's got a steel bike and a box bag. So I struck up a conversation with him, and that was kind of the start of our friendship.
So Ben, maybe you can dispel this false image that I have in my head that you were slightly reluctant to join in on all of this nonsense at the start. Did I have that right, or do I have that wrong?
I don't know if I would put it that way. I definitely started, I think, a couple years later than these guys. I looked it up. The first popular I rode was summer of 2013. I had I'd always commuted by bike and had gotten into riding some recreationally, but kind of up till then, a long ride for me was Paradise Loop or something like that. And someone I knew, Francisco Grajales, someone you might know.
Oh yeah, I remember that name.
Ride down to Pescadero, and I remember him talking about randonneuring, and he was super passionate about it. I didn't quite understand, was it a race? Was it an event? Was it just people riding bikes? But heard about the Populaire, showed up for that, had a great time, met some really good friends there, not actually these guys. And then I think rode my first 200K the fall 2014, the Lighthouse. Of course, immediately decided I needed a steel rando bike that I couldn't ride stuff like this on the road bike I had. And I got hooked from there. It became a way for me to push myself athletically in a way that I never really had before. A way to explore the Bay Area in a sort of structured way, but one that didn't feel intimidating. And I think started riding Flesh the next year or two was probably the first overnight ride I did, and met some of these guys at multiple rides.
Yeah. So somewhere along the way, leading up to 2019, you guys all decided that you wanted to do PBP together. Talk about that. I think that there are some challenges to trying to successfully complete PBP with a larger group. You know, if you go into this with a attitude that you're not necessarily tethered to a larger group, you can roll with the things that come up a little bit more easily. But trying to organize 4 people to get ready to leave a control might be a bit more challenging than on your own. So somebody talk about that part of deciding to do it as a group, and perhaps how it even worked out for you, like thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
Carlin, you want to start?
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to remember. I think my memory might be a little bit faulty here, but I feel like a lot of the credit here goes to Ian as somebody who had done it in 2015. And, speaking for myself, I felt like I relied a lot on his experience and his planning of that whole process. Even though we did decide to do the ride together, I think we all had the understanding that there were always going to be times where some of us were feeling great while others were feeling terrible. And we'd always kind of have to, we're not always going to be on the same wavelength. So I think we were all willing to say, there are times where we're going to ride off on our own, or I just need to be by myself, or, I'm feeling really good and I need to push on ahead. And I think we decided, if I remember correctly, that the control, the overnight controls would be the anchor point. So we would say, I'm going to get to the control where we get to. And then, when Ben or Irving arrive, we'll have a chance to regroup, assess the situation, and then try to leave at the same time. So, overall, I thought it was a great experience. I definitely was really happy with the way that went. But yeah, I'm curious to hear other folks.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. I think we had also ridden together a lot before then. We'd done multiple flushes together. I think we rode most of the long rides that year together. I definitely remember riding the 600 together. So I think we kind of had seen each other's highs and lows, and kind of knew what people need and didn't need, including riding by themselves sometimes.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, when I was coming down from La Roque, I saw you guys in maybe 3 different groups, like 2 of you were together and the other 2 were separate?
Yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah, so based on my experience in 2015, because Gabe and I had planned to ride together in 2015, and I found it, both of us, I think, found it quite challenging to like stay together the whole time because it's such a long ride, and there's so many, like you said, things that could happen. So we ended up riding together for a lot of it, but also riding separately for parts of it. But kind of hadn't really like established that beforehand. What was the plan? So in 2019, because we had 4 of us, we knew that we could separate if we needed to, but kind of regroup, like Carlin said, at the controls, and roll out together. But then if we needed to separate on the road, we would know that we could kind of split up and support each other. And then ultimately that we would hopefully finish together. So that was kind of like the plan. So it wasn't really like an ODAC style thing, or like a flesh thing where we were together the entire time.
And we had made plans for overnight lodging, 2 nights in Ludiac and the 3rd night in an Airbnb that were de facto rendezvous points. We all knew we were going to the same place with the same core hours.
Right, you become stationary targets at that point. So others could catch up and find you.
Yeah, and as I recall, like some people had to leave the controls a little earlier. Some people got to the controls at different times, but we were always like there together to talk and like look at the schedule and say, hey, we'll roll out and we can meet up on the road or things like that. So
you said riding with Gabe presented challenges for sticking together, and then in your group in 2019, that there were things that would come up. What sorts of things would split the group up? Would it simply be climbing pace?
I don't think it was climbing pace. I think it was just where you were mentally or physically. I know Carlin was trying to stay with us and kind of ride with us for probably the first third of it. And I remember he was having a lot of knee pain. And at a certain point, he realized when he rode harder and wasn't spinning as much, there was less knee pain.
Interesting.
And Ben and I are like, okay, that's, if there's less pain, like, and that means you got to drop us and wait for us at a control. That's totally fine. So yeah, Carlin kind of zipped off at that point. I know for me, I got sleepy at a certain point and just started drifting back, and I just needed to take a ditch nap. And Ian was with me, and I was literally gonna like ditch nap at this weird corner, and Ian was like, no, like don't ditch nap here, like let's go ride a little bit further, let's find you like a safer place to ditch nap. But I was like, I can't keep going. Like I was really dragging at that point. So it was just like different ebbs and flows, and yeah, different physical and mental like ups and downs.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know about your individual approaches to preparing for PBP. Did you guys do the same things, or did you all go off on your own and then come back prepared separately?
I think like Ian and Ben mentioned, we had done a lot of the long rides together. So we would do the flesh pretty frequently. So having just that experience of riding together for 24-hour stretches, I think was really good. And that's mostly just from a like social dynamics perspective, just like you're spending a lot of time with these people. So it's really important to know like how does Ian behave when things get really tough? How do you know when Irving's in a bad mood? Like when the going gets rough for Ben, how does he react? Same thing for me. So I think all of this is, who likes playing music on Bluetooth speakers? Who doesn't like playing music on Bluetooth speakers? From a training perspective, I think, definitely doing things like the 600K, also doing those together was pretty big as well. But yeah, from my perspective, I actually, like Irving mentioned, that I had been dealing with some knee pain issues during PBP, and that had been kind of a a theme in the years leading up to PBP, where every year I would kind of do the 600K, and for weeks after that, I would be dealing with knee issues. So I spent a lot of my time in the year leading up to PBP, not actually doing that much riding, but focusing a lot more on just like strength and conditioning and like physical therapy type stuff to make sure my knee would be in good shape for the ride.
Mhm. Did you have doubts about it when you started PBP, or was the knee pain a surprise?
I think it was when I did the 600K in 2019, I actually didn't have any issues. So I was it definitely was a bit of a surprise during PBP,
Mhm.
and didn't really quite know what to do about it.
Mhm.
You were definitely struggled with it in the middle, or
Yeah.
fairly
So
seriously thinking about dropping out.
yeah, it was a really interesting story. So part of the complicating factor is actually because in 2018 I had been dealing with knee issues. I had only ridden a 200K. So my sign up start wave, I didn't get to sign up in the right spot as the rest of the guys. So I ended up starting, I think, maybe like 3 hours later than they did, I think.
Wow.
So I kind of rode my own pace for the first 2 to 300K, and I met up with them like 200K in, I think. And then that middle section is when I think rode mostly with the crew, and I think that's kind of leading into that. I think that's when I started having really bad knee pain. And then, as Irving mentioned, just like I think I just got like really frustrated at some point, and then this big group of, I think they must have been 80-hour starters, came streaming by really fast, and just in like a fit of frustration, just like stomped on the pedals and started chasing them. And lo and behold, I was like, this actually feels pretty good. So I ended up riding with them.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
So was it Ian's stories about having gone to PBP in 2015 that set the hook in you, the rest of you guys?
I mean, I think I dropped off Ian and Gabe at the airport actually, and just seeing how excited they were, and getting a little bit of FOMO, and just being like, oh, maybe if I had gotten my like crap together in the year prior, like maybe I could have joined them in 2015. But yeah, just seeing them two, that was already just like, oh, it was like nice to see two friends doing it together. And then yeah, when they got back, like it was rough, but they were still friends. And I think that was the main goal for me, when we were talking about this and being excited about it. It was like there was this collective energy about it, but it was also like, no, I still want to be friends with you all after this, and I don't want any fractured relationships or things like that. But I think seeing Ian do it in 2015 and talk about it just started getting the ball rolling. And it was always just more like self-doubt about like, can I do a 600, and how am I going to function between 6 and 12? And I think slowly working up to that, and like kind of addressing any self-doubt and any fears about that, kind of got me ready for PBP.
So general question, anybody can raise their hand and answer here. So a lot of times I've asked people, like, what are the things that the bits of advice that you got that really helped? And then I turned it around and said to them, what did you find was a complete surprise when you got to PBP and when you were doing that? And I want to throw that one out to you guys. So what weren't you prepared for, either happily or unhappily? So what did you find that kind of woke you up there? Did I stump you guys?
No, I can start with kind of a positive thing, but I think you hear all these stories about how many people there are and how many volunteers, and no matter how many stories I heard about that, it doesn't register until you're actually there. And even when you're there, it's just like your jaw just keeps dropping, and you're still just in amazement of just what a big event it is and how special it really is. So that just really resonated with me, like even through all the sleep deprivation, even on the final day, and like all of that, it just felt like kind of a weird daydream, but it felt really special, and it just continued to do so. Just seeing random parts of the night, random parts of the courses, like so many different riders rolling by, and it's just like, cool, another recumbent. How many recumbents could there be? How many funny bikes are there? They just keep seeming to stream by, and there keeps being like lemonade stands or people giving you coffee or cheering you on. And I think, yeah, no matter how many times you hear that, it's just still really amazing to experience.
Did you guys hand out any of the pins?
Yeah,
We actually had a fun story with that where we were riding with Ryan Thompson,
Uh-huh.
and he was like marshaling our group where he would be on the front and we were drafting behind him, and he would spot kids, and then he would yell out instructions to us, and we would throw the pins to the kids.
But I think we brought patches and buttons and maybe stickers as well. And I was definitely passing those out with just like our silly Boyz on the Hoods logo, and it was just fun to pass out and also trade with other randonneurs.
What kinds of things did you get in return?
I got a few stickers from different clubs. I got one from Brazil, and then some other domestic clubs, and I think maybe one or two from Europe.
Yeah, I traded jerseys with a British rider in 2015, and then I traded jerseys with a Japanese rider in 2019. So that was a fun thing to do. One piece of advice that I got, or like a thing that really helped me, was I did a workers ride for the 400K with Kevin Fitzpatrick one year. This was after 2015. So 2015, I had no schedule, no idea how long I could stop anywhere, or how long I could sleep for, or anything. And then Kevin Fitzpatrick in 2015, I did a workers ride, or after 2015, I did a workers ride with him. And saw how like his pace, like his riding pace was very slow, but he was completely like in control at all times of like his progress and his ride because of like his scheduling. And so we would be coming to a control, and we would be within 5 minutes of like the time he had put on his schedule for arriving at the control. And seeing that kind of like sparked something for me of being like, I could make a schedule and really like know how this ride's going to unfold. And then if something happens that's unexpected, I can just like adjust the stopping time or the riding speed like in the schedule to meet that, but still get to the controls at the same time. And that sort of like, I think allowed us to make a schedule for 2019 that was really like made it so that we could all kind of ride together more and just know like what we needed to do to finish, which made it a lot more approachable, I think, than just kind of, I mean, obviously it's fun and crazy to just like jump into it with no schedule and you have no idea what you're doing and you're just going to sleep at the controls and whatever. But like on the flip side, if you're kind of don't know what you're doing or riding with a group, it really helps to have like a schedule, I think.
Yeah, and I think we got good at doing that as a group on the flushes. Like I think we would have a pretty tight schedule on the flash, and invariably we would end up adjusting it, usually to account for going slower than expected, but we would know what would need to happen and talk through it as a group. And
so Ian, aside from riding with Carlin, Ben, and Irving in 2019, was the scheduling aspect a distinguishing feature between 2015 and 2019 for you?
For sure, yeah. I think it well, 2015 was very like, I didn't know if I was going to be able to finish. So I felt very, on the edge. So it made it very like powerful, like emotionally, but at the same time, like it felt very serious. Then in 2019, I kind of, I'd already done it once, but I had a schedule. As long as I was kind of hitting the controls on the schedule, I knew like, all right, I'm on track to finish. So it made it a little bit more relaxed, I guess, in the sense that like I could see more of the humor in it. Cause like I find PBP very funny, just like seeing people in all sorts of distress and different weird situations, and everyone from around the world speaking different languages and all of that. So it made it a little bit more lighthearted, I guess.
Okay. So,
And for folks trying to work out a schedule, last time around, there was an excellent Excel spreadsheet that somebody made it very easy to plug and play
mhm.
the schedule in. I'm sure there's
So I
something.
want to ask about if you got behind schedule, how did that affect you guys? Having the schedule, did that, even if you were behind at any given point, did it help allay any of the anxiety, or did the anxiety build when you would get behind on the schedule?
I think for me, I think our overnights ended up shorter than we had hoped.
Okay,
We just kind of had to accept that.
This is definitely a me and Ben problem, and I feel like we had already addressed it a little bit because Ian was a good schedule like master,
mhm,
even on the fleshes and the 600K. I had an issue with my saddle, and then I ended up being probably like 2 hours later than my normal than everyone here got to the campground, the Indian Creek campground. And I was like, cool, that just means 2 hours less of rest for me. And that's just something you got to accept. And it was nice that Ian had the schedule. And then now I knew, like, okay, let's see how my body's going to function with like 2 hours less sleep than I had planned. And, it was fine. It was rough, but dealing with that on a 600K and then
Mhm.
going into a flesh or PBP, knowing that you could deal with sleep deprivation, that's kind of nice to, go through the schedule and deal with it beforehand.
so.
Yeah, I think the main thing with a schedule that's helpful is if you know when you have to leave the control.
Uh-huh,
It's kind of like if you lose time on the schedule, yeah, it sucks. You can't like sleep as long as you wanted, or you can't, do other things you were going to do. But as long as you know when you need to leave a control, then it's kind of that kind of keeps you on, you're on track to still finish, right?
Mhm.
Or even when we went off course and lost a bunch of time, it's like as long as we get to the next control and we can leave it at the right time, we know we're still going to be on track to finish.
mhm. So, did you guys ever consider anything other than the 90-hour start? No? Okay. Figure is nodding, shaking.
Who was it? I don't know.
So,
It was like we wanted the full spectacle.
yeah, so this is something that actually I remember thinking about maybe doing the 84-hour start, but really wanting to just like experience the full craziness.
Mhm,
And maybe in subsequent times I would do the 84-hour start. But I remember this is something that I told Mateen back before, he was trying to convince me to do the 84-hour. And I was like,
mhm.
well, I want the full spectacle. He's like, you do the 84-hour start, you get 84 hours of spectacle. But I didn't listen to him. I ended up doing the 90-hour. Honestly, I'm glad I did, because the night riding portion, that was actually something that surprised me, is how much I enjoyed the night riding. I always liked night riding in the flesh and the 600K and the overnight brevets, but
Mhm.
just PvP, just purely the number of people that are out at night and you're riding with is just so different from anything else. So
Yeah,
The first night is particularly special, rolling out at dusk and just being in these what felt like mile-long pace lines, rolling into the sunset, ripping through tiny towns with huge crowds is something I'll always remember.
yeah. So, Ben, I think the irony of you having come to randonneuring behind all of these guys is that this year you're the most active still doing randonneuring.
Wow, way to be called out.
True. Is that what the official records say?
That's my sense of things. You're riding brevets up with Davis now, right?
Yeah, so I live in Sacramento these days.
Yeah.
I've ridden a gravel popular a couple months ago. I rode 1 or 2 200Ks last year. I think that's about it.
Oh, okay.
Similar to when I got into it in the Bay Area, it's been kind of a way to explore local areas with just the right amount of structure for me of a route somebody else has figured out and
Curated.
designed to be a good experience. And there's it's a good group here as well.
Yeah.
But it's definitely
So,
a long time since I've done anything longer than a 200.
on PBP, can you think of like what is the point during which you were the most happy, or like what might have caused that, or what is the single most memorable thing that happened for you guys? Let's start with Irving.
Happiest moment during PBP.
Well, just the most significant thing that you can remember.
I mean, I think rolling in together, like to the finish.
Mhm.
And if I recall, we saw you at the final major control, Rob.
At
I
Drew.
forget the town
Yes,
name.
we
Drew,
we saw
okay.
each other at Drew.
I will also add that, like, seeing you at Drew, Ian says that, you know, it was like, I think it's like the Super Bowl of, you know, of randonneuring, NBA finals, whatever. But just seeing all the work that you do, just for the community and everything, and then just seeing you at Drew, just sitting down and kind of like basking in in the entire thing, and being there to experience that with you. And then, yeah, just being able to ride into the finish, like all as a group. It was just really special. And, you know, there were ups and downs, and Carlin dealt with pain. Like I dealt with a lot of like hand and feet pain, and just like a lot of self-doubt during the ride. And I know Ian and Ben were just, everyone was going through things at different times, but the fact that we got to roll in together, I thought that was really special.
So, Ian?
Well, a really memorable part for me was we had an Airbnb in Mortain, and it had an ancient it was an ancient old French home from like turn of the century or something, and it had this ancient key that looked like a, you know,
Something from
medieval
a cartoon?
skeleton key, something from a cartoon. And Carlin and I were frantically trying to get into the Airbnb with the key, and we couldn't figure out how to turn it in the lock because it was some kind of old school Euro thing. And so it was, I don't know, maybe midnight or 1 a.m. and a bunch of drunk teenagers passed by us in the street, and I used my broken French to ask them to open the door for us with the key. So they're drunkenly fiddling with it, and they finally were like, "Oh!" and they opened the door, and that was a memorable moment because we really wanted to get into that Airbnb.
Yeah.
Of course, since it was in France, it had no sheets, no towels. You're supposed to bring your own, but it was still pretty sweet.
Okay. It was indoors. It was warm, right?
Yes, it wasn't warm, but it was indoors.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. So Ben, same question to you. What's the first thing that pops into your mind as a memory from PBP?
Yeah, I mentioned that first night earlier, riding into the dusk and the sunset. That was really neat. I also this blanking on which control it was on way back, maybe Tintiniac. And just kind of the absurdity of it. We were all sleep deprived. I remember kind of wandering around for a place to take a nap, lying down on a piece of cardboard under a stairwell, fumbling with everything. Carlin was sleeping, sitting totally upright on a bench with 8 other people on it. That definitely sticks in my mind as well.
So Carlin, you're next.
Yeah, lots of memories of the food. I will say the food at the controls, like at the official controls, tended to be somewhat underwhelming, but then there were all these tents on the side of the road, or like spectators out handing out food that just always like still sticks in my mind. So I have a very distinct memory of just like eating delicious sweet watermelon on a hillside somewhere and like looking out over the sun setting over this big field of sunflowers and thinking like, this is the best watermelon I've ever eaten.
Yeah.
And yeah, stuff like that, just like nothing to do with the official organizers, but just French people out in the countryside cutting up watermelons.
Ah, nice.
I think the other thing I was gonna add is not just that I think it's very easy to get caught up in the logistics and preparing and worried about your fitness and various dynamics. And easy to lose sight of the fact that it's just like 3 or 4 days of riding your bike across gorgeous scenery with people you already know, people you meet, and that it's fun in the moment too. Like, yes, you'll be sleep deprived. Yes, things will hurt, but like, that was one surprise. Like, it was just fun to ride my bike. And the same
Yeah.
with its front.
Yeah, it's like
Oh.
it's more than an achievement. It's just like an amazing experience to be part of.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Even if you DNF, like even if you ride 900K and you DNF, you still like will have an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Remember to be excited for the part that's just out there riding your bike.
So I'm going to share my screen real quick here. And can you guys see the photo I have here?
Yep.
There you all
Oh
are.
man, RIP Lucky Duck.
Yeah, right. So
I think Brian Kilgore's been done for about 2 days in this photo.
All right. Yeah, as I remember, that's about correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
So any parting comments from any of you about PBP and, you know, and anything that you think that somebody should know going in?
I have 2 things that I feel like maybe I didn't really elaborate on, but yeah, to Ben's effect about it's just fun to be on a bike, French countryside during the summer
Mhm.
with friends that you know, people in clubs that you know, people that you may not have met yet. It's just, I was kind of blown away by the people that I met during the ride. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I'm a very like USA nationalistic person, but yeah, you see different clubs and you're just like, oh my God, like other English speakers, and you just like latch on to them. Like I was so happy to yeah, run into like the Asheville crew and just like other people that you may know from the internet or from other rides and other randonneuring clubs. But it was just really nice to experience that and have that camaraderie. And then likewise, yeah, I don't know. I dealt with like a lot of self-doubt and anxiety like leading up to the ride, and you get caught up in all these logistics and just like, oh, can I do this? Like you get caught up in your head. But I don't know, just in the time frame of the ride, I kind of like went through ups and downs and then kind of realized like, you know what, like it's fun. You've done all the work, you've done everything you can, and you know, you kind of surprise yourself. And I think anyone who's done a brevet, a populaire, even 200K or whatever, you kind of keep pushing yourself and you're kind of surprised by what you can actually do.
Mhm.
And I felt that was my entire experience with PBP. You know, there were times where I was like, I don't think I can finish. Like I need to sleep. Everything hurts. And then you just keep going just a little bit further to the next control. And you just kind of surprise yourself with what you can do. So I was just really surprised by that.
Yeah. Anyone else have some parting comments?
I think that one great thing about randonneuring is you have the opportunity to spend so much time with people and kind of like deepen your friendships. So I really appreciated just all the chances we had to spend time together randonneuring. And I think that whether you're doing it with friends or like meeting people in the club, I think that just striking up a conversation with the people you're riding with and kind of using that opportunity of spinning the pedals to talk to and get to know different people is it's a great social outlet and a way to meet people. And that's one of the most fun parts of PvP. I think anyone who's gone will say that you just meet these amazing people from around the world there. But even within our own club, like I appreciated that this kind of goal of doing PvP together became a way for the four of us to bond and spend more time together, you know, and not always riding, but maybe just meeting up to have a drink and like talk about the logistics or just hang out and talk about the flesh or anything like that. It's a fun way to deepen your friendships.
So before I ask my final question, did anyone else have some parting comments?
I guess one thing I'll point out as well is, I'll agree with everything that both Irving and Ian said. One part that I found really fun was hanging out with the SFR crew in the lead up to the event, and being in the hotel and being in just being around all the other SFR members and seeing all the nervous energy and all like that. I thought that was really fun, and just getting to knowing everyone else.
Yeah. So
I think I'd also add that there's so many ways to do this event, randonneuring, to train for it. People from across the world do it in very different ways. I think my strategy for training and so on was just to ride a ton leading up. Other people are much more structured. Meetings, other people, people coming from Minnesota are not getting earnestly into long rides until the snow thaws and they show up prepared as well. So there's so many different ways.
Right.
Yeah, it all works.
So here's the context for the last question that I want to ask. I remember coming back after PvP in 2007 and running into somebody that was tangentially related to SFR, pardon me, and he was bending my ear about the fact that he didn't think that enough information about the potential injuries that one could happen to befall upon them riding such long distances. And he thought, we should make a bigger effort to tell people about the hand numbness, for example, or Schirmer's neck or whatever. I kind of think that message has gotten out a lot. You hear a lot of people talking, and we probably saw some of our comrades dealing with cases of Schirmer's neck, for example. And I think we all knew about the neuropathy, our little fingers not being able to feel things for several months afterward. But the one thing that I don't think gets enough coverage is, so I'm going to ask you guys here, how long was it until you recovered from all of your baguette injuries? The roof of my mouth was so torn up for weeks afterward by the time I got home.
So funny story about this is, so my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, Sarah, had visited France, and she was waiting for us at the finish. And I'm like laying in the hotel the next day. My mouth is just totally raw from baguette mouth. And she's like, "Oh, I'm going to go to the Carrefour. I'm going to get you some food. Like, just let me know what you want." I'm like, "Oh, I don't care. Just get me whatever." And she comes back and she has this big grocery bag. She's like, "Oh, I got you all this delicious food." And the first thing she pulls out of the bag is pineapple. And any other time I'd be like, pineapple's my favorite fruit, but I was not ready for it. I just took one bite and my mouth just exploded in pain. Yeah.
It's definitely a real concern. Didn't we see somebody dipping their baguette in Coca-Cola to soften it up?
Yikes. I'm not sure I want that mental image.
Well, we stayed in France afterwards. Irving, Ben, and I, and went to the Pyrenees to
right.
Luz Saint-Sauveur to ride the Tourmalet and stuff. So we are, still stuck with plenty of baguettes. and the food is not amazing in Luz Saint-Sauveur, so it's mostly pizza and baguettes.
That's too bad. You should have come to the places I went to after PBP in 2019. Boy, the food was fabulous there. Well, guys, thank you for making time to have a chat about this. Just a real quick show of hands here. Is PBP in your future still? Will there be another one for you guys? Yes, no? Ian says yes. Ben?
My life goal is to do 5.
Oh, yeah? Well, I
But,
will be.
we'll see if life intervenes.
Yeah. So by doing, does that mean starting or does that mean finishing 5?
Well, I'd like to finish, but
Okay. Yeah,
if I DNF, then
right. Well,
I'm more accepting of DNFs than I used to be back in the day. It was like, oh, I'm never going to DNF, and then I think Ore Springs was the ride where I was like, all right, I'm not going to make it. I have to DNF. So then after that, it was kind of like, well, I still had a fun experience riding whatever. I can't remember how far Boonville is, but I still had a fun experience. I'm like, maybe DNFing isn't the end of the world. It's just like I had a fun ride that was shorter than expected. So yeah,
I would like to do another one. I can't say it's definitely not going to be 2023, maybe not even 27, but at some point, I think it's in my future.
Well, you guys have lots of time left. I think the oldest of you is maybe half of my age at this point. So there's plenty of time. I didn't start until I was 50. Well, guys, thanks again for spending the time here, tearing yourself away from your evening schedules with all your families and whatnot. I appreciate that. And thanks everybody for watching, and we'll catch you on the next time. Thanks a lot.
For having us, Rob.
bye. Thank you, Rob.
You bet.